All right, so I'm going to do this video a little bit backwards here. I'm showing you basically the end. If you just watched part one, I'll go ahead and label the other oil pressure gauge one where I was kind of comparing the mechanical oil pressure gauge against my original OEM electrical one, and seeing which one is which. Again, my sending unit seems to be working pretty well. It's a replacement. But what I was getting here at the end when I showed in part one was I was getting about, I don't know, like 10 psi, somewhere in there. Again, I know my, via the mechanical oil pressure gauge, that I'm getting good oil pressure somewhere between 30 and 50, somewhere depending on how warm it is. But this was only registering like 10. I was going to be okay with that. Basically as long as it's showing something, because I know it's good. But I was revving the engine, I was doing other things, and it really wasn't moving. It was moving maybe a tiny bit, not even up to the 20 mark. And so what I did here is I pulled this apart. So in the next 15 minutes of the video or something, you see I pulled this apart, and I found a way, or I realized just by accident really, that if you put a refrigerator magnet or any kind of magnet in there, you can increase the range. And so, it kind of showed that it's still a little bit low right now. It's showing probably 20-ish to 40 when I really know it's 30 to 50, but it's such a small indication there. I just want to know that the oil pressure is reasonably high. So I'm actually happy with it. I'm going to go ahead. I have kind of masking tape right there, just kind of mocked up in there, and I just took it for a test drive, and it seems to be working pretty well. It jumps a little bit there, but again, it's 40 years old. I could buy another one. I could try to find another one on eBay. You can get them for like 15 bucks, somewhere in there. But you're rolling the dice. Either the needle's it's not gonna work at all. It's gonna work partially. You're gonna try to open it up, clean it up, redo it, whatever. The needle might break like it did for me. I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. But I'm gonna consider this a success. I'm happy with it. I got all my original gauges here. Again, the oil pressure's working pretty well. Again, between 20 and 40. So I'm pretty happy with that. And we'll, hopefully it'll last and keep going. But yeah, so just, keep watching. And again, I'll pull this apart and we'll see what happens. And if you like the video, go ahead and like it and subscribe. I'm going to be putting on some more videos, taking apart my power steering pump, and doing some other things, doing rebuild at the end of this year. It's July right now. It's hot as hell. And then, so I'm going to be filming all of that as well. So hopefully this is helpful. We're going to go ahead and take a little flathead screwdriver here and just kind of walk this around and see if we can't stretch out this band here and get it open. I've already done this to a prior, or the original oil pressure gauge that I had. I think there's still something funky going on with it, so I bought this one for $5 at a swap show, so that was kind of nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and walk this around here, and we're gonna see. I'm just gonna give it a little twisting action. Just a little bit at a time. Just take your time. Rather press that out because it does stretch. I think a little bit more. And there we go. So I just showed the other one and taking the front kind of glass off of it. I actually have two here. This is the one that I was just pulling the front off of. And I apparently was not careful enough because I broke off the needle, which basically makes it pretty useless. But then I was kind of poking around at it, and I think the whole needle mechanism, because the bottom fell off too. That part that goes right under there that goes back and forth. It was completely pretty much disintegrated. I don't know if that's plastic or whatever, but I think the heat, it just got baked in enough. That was one I had gotten from a swap meet for about $5. I mean, I was sad to see it break on me. So I went back to the original one, actually the one that I showed in the prior video, and I've been playing around entirely too much with it, but this is super interesting. So I was showing before how I was having trouble not really registering differences in oil pressure, and my oil pressure via the mechanical gauge seems to be pretty good. It ranges from, I look back at that video and it's probably 35 when it gets warm, maybe a little bit less than that, to probably around 50 when it first starts up before it has a chance to warm up. But this was only registering like 15 and really not moving much from it at all. And I was messing around, and again, just to kind of show the setup here, in terms of bench testing, you know, having to start up the car each time and dealing with all that crap is just a big pain in the butt. So I was, again, I spent way too much time. I have a bunch of these wall warts sitting around here. This is a 12 volt, 2 amp one from God knows what Asian power devices. I don't even know it was from some old thing. But that's all you need is a 12 volt source. So I went ahead and that's plugged in over here. And essentially what I've done is I've taken a couple of my alligator clips. I just put a kind of a screw in there to get to the positive. So this is the positive charge inside the little connector here. And I have it connected up to the power on the back of this here. And I have a ground, and the ground will go to here, to the outside piece. And then I have a yellow wire here that I'm going to also do to the outside. So again, those are the outside ground or negative. Let's see if I can get this on there right. Well, I had it on there. That should stay. And I had some old Arduino stuff. I was trying to play around with trying to simulate the ohms. The ohms range from the sending unit, go from 0 up to about 80 or 85, somewhere in there. So I had my voltmeter. I was messing around with some of the stuff. I tried these are actually little bulbs, actually side indicator bulbs that I had. These are only 5 ohms each. So I would have had to daisy chain a bunch of them together, because the center range around 35 psi, somewhere in there, is going to be on oil pressure, which is going to read sort of more, in between that 20 and 40 there, is about 25 ohms. And I had this little potentiometer here. This worked okay when I connected up, and I put this in series to add some resistance to the circuit between the ground and the signal here, because that's really all it is your sending unit is just adding some amount of ohms, and then your gauge is reading that as certain oil pressure. So that's all that it's doing. So I had this, and this worked okay, except for this was like from 0 to infinity. So trying to range it between, get it over just about 25 was very difficult. If I just tapped it, it would add 5 or 10 ohms to it. So that was kind of difficult. I was looking online, and I had some other Arduino stuff, and I know you might have trouble finding this, but if you have some, you can make a resistor at home. I looked at a couple of videos. If you're really wanting to bench test this stuff and try to figure out what's going on. Again, I know my sending unit is working pretty well, but it's the gauge here that's not registering much of a difference. I had some old diodes here, so I was messing around. I know it's hard to see. I kind of daisy chained them together. Again, you can use light bulbs if you got it, measure it with your voltmeter, how many ohms resistance it's providing, or there's some other stuff around the house that you can find potentially. These are 10 ohm resistors, So 10, 20, and then when you put two of them in parallel like that, I'm not sure you can see it very well, but two of them like that, that actually makes 5. So I have 25 here. I measured it with my voltmeter, and it's spot on, 24.8 or something like that. So this is going to be a close indicator and should shoot this up to like between 20 and 30 or around 30 if the gauge is reading right. And so it's kind of interesting that I go here, and it's interesting because as the resistance goes up or the resistance goes down, the gauge goes up. So you have to constantly be thinking about it in the opposite terms. But when I put it here, this is 25 ohms. I'm reading about what it was before, if you can see that. Okay, that's sitting at right about, I don't know, 10 or something like that. I take 10 off of that, I'm sitting at 15 ohms. See, it goes up a little bit. And then I go to 5 ohms, it goes up even further. So the gauge is, it is registering differences in the ohms, but it's short, it's low, and it's not using the full range. And here's another way to test this as well. If you have 0 ohms, and this is what really kind of clued it into me. So if I just bypass the resistors altogether, I go to 0 ohms, I'm pegging out at 60, 65, somewhere in there. And that's a problem. So that's going to lower it the whole time. So again, you can kind of just go straight from 12 volts into the signal without any resistance, and that's going to read too low. Again, it's, 62, 63, somewhere in there. It's not using the full range. I thought it used to, maybe when I took it apart before, I took it apart like a year ago or something like that, I may have done something inside to reduce the magnetism or something like that. I'm not quite sure what it was. But again, I kind of realized, okay, it is working. It is sensing different resistance, but it's not in the range that it's supposed to read. So let me go ahead and pull the faceplate off of here. I'm trying to be real careful because that needle is going to bust on me if I'm not. Okay, so there's the face. Now you see the inner workings. Again, that whole thing will come out, but it is glued to the back, and you'll have to take the nuts off the back, and you can pull it off. And I might do that because I want to seal the little lens piece there for the light. But again, looking here, you get the same thing. It's going, but it's not going the full way. I was poking around there trying to see. There are little filament wires in there, so you got to be super careful. The whole thing has to come out at once. Looking at this one that is out, this is both of them are loose on mine, and you can't even. I can barely see it right here. There's a little filament wire connecting that, and there's a little filament wire connecting this diode here to the wraparound piece. So you have to be very, very careful with it. But anyway, so I was poking around with my screwdriver, and I don't know if you can see this very well, but I was taking a look at this. Oh, it's not doing it now. I wonder if I think I was messing around with it so much it lost a lot of its magnetism. But this was moving the needle when I got it close. Well, that's disappointing that's not doing it now. Anyways, I noticed that it was moving the needle, and I thought, well, if there's some way to add something, again, I'm not looking for it to be exact, but I would like it to vary a little bit more than it is now. I started messing around, and I found an old refrigerator magnet with a shell, RIP, refrigerator magnet with a shell on it. I found a magnet, and I busted it open because I was been playing around with it. But when I put this in there, it actually pulls the needle up, and especially as you get it closer to this this area here, it depends on where it is. It's either pushing it towards it or away from it. So you can flip the magnet around for the pull, and you can make it move. See, it's not touching there, and it's making it move. So if I could add a little bit of a little boost by adding a battery or a magnet in there, then I can get it to do. Maybe it'll work a little bit better if I put, so again, that's 25 ohms, that's right in there. Yeah, there you go. I had it plugged in, that's what it was. It's a little easier to see this. So even my screwdriver is drawing, depending on how I have it turned over, it's generally pushing it away. If I put underneath, because there's that other piece there, that's pushing it. Again, I notice it doesn't take much. It's very little. But especially when I have the magnet in there. So there, and I just turn it over and it draws it to it. So if I want a little bit wider range, I've been playing around with this for a while, and I connected it back up to the Jeep a few times. I can put this in there and slide that back there and just add a little bit of the draw to it. So if I leave it there and insert this back in there, it's a little, well, I can probably show it to you. Again, that's 25 ohms. That's 15. And that's 5. And guess what? When I take it all the way off, it pegs it. So that's what you want. You want it to peg when there's no resistance, because then you know it's using the full range. I know enough about this electrical stuff to be dangerous, so I'm just going by little bits and pieces that I picked up. So if I put this back in there, very sensitive. And again, now with the magnet is sitting in the background, that's moving up to 20 right now. It was like 12 before, 10 before. This is 15 ohms. This is 5. It's getting close. And this is pegged. So again, there's no resistance. That's pegged. That's what you want. Again, 5. It's going to read it like 80. So that's 5 ohms. And actually, when you look at the sheet here, that's, again, I know it's hard to see. That's getting right up there. That's super close to what it should be. 5, 15, 25. So again, it's showing a range. It's not locking it up. That magnet somehow, it's kind of janky and it's kind of glued together. But if that works, then I'm going to hot glue gun that magnet in there, and I'm going to seal it back up, and I'm going to put it back in the Jeep. And like I said, I've already been playing around with it, and I'm getting a lot more variation in the needle, and I think the needle is even more correct now, even with that as well. So I'm getting it on both sides. Anyways, you may not want to spend all this time on it and mess around with it, but apparently if you're getting some kind of it's not pegging out or whatever, if you try to put a 12 volt or you feel like it's reading low but it's low incorrectly, you can try some kind of like part of a refrigerator magnet and somehow put it in there such that it's helping draw the needle a little bit more towards it. I actually tried flipping over the magnet and putting it over on the left hand side, and it was pushing it, and it was actually doing a good job pushing it and giving a little boost. But when the car was off, it wasn't reading down at the boat, because again, it was pushing it. The base rate was a little bit higher. I'd rather, if it's not working at all, I'd rather see it not working at all. So I'd rather draw it to it. And again, it's the magnet closeness to the, not even the needle per se, it's closest to the windings here that's adding that extra magnetic field in there. It's pulling it over. Anyway, I will show it when I get it back together, and probably and get this all sealed back up and back into the Jeep. But I mean, hopefully it gets back in there and it all works how it does on the bench here. But that's pretty exciting to be able to know that. I mean, if it's not completely DOA, then there may be a way to make some adjustments to it so it shows a little bit more accuracy. I mean, if it's a 40-year-old gauge, so this is from, again, my 81 CJ7 with a 258. So it's a couple years old, so I'm happy that it's working as well as it is. Here we have it. It's not pretty right now. I just got to put the back bracket on, but I've been driving it around. It's still a little low, but it is reacting